What's up, comic book fans? I am Anchor Pete, and I am all sexy and unshaven and got my work shirt on. And to the other side of me is another sexy but more shaven man, my good co-host, Brian Coors Hair. How you doing tonight?
Doing good, Pete.
Nice, nice. And now, shall we begin our chant of guard for the House of Zod, build for the House of Zod, block for the House of Zod. And that's in the No Screens for Work version.
I should have brought the words up for that because it was stuck in my head for a little while, but I couldn't remember in the moment there.
Yeah. There's definitely guard for the House of Zod. There's like build for the House of Zod, and they're just moving around big giant boulders and stacking them up for some reason.
Yeah, I don't know why they were stacking them up. I mean, that chant was so like weird and out of place to me that I'm like, this has to be a reference to something, but I cannot find any information on it.
Yes. And so people are probably wondering what the fuck we're talking about, unless they watched this week's episode of Young Justice, which was number 20 for season 4. The season is called Phantoms. And me and Brian are talking about some Phantom Zone action. Got a lot of Kryptonians that kind of look like they're naked, but they have like Superman symbols on them, Kryptonian symbols, and they're flying around. But we will save our Kryptonian talk for later. We have a couple different points we want to go through first. So this episode, number 20, was called "What Were the Action?" Fuck! I just started reading the question. I'm really tired. The name of the episode was "Forbidden Secrets of Civilizations Past," right?
Yes.
And my very first question to you was, well, what were the secrets of Civilizations Past?
I don't know. I mean, maybe it was the Zod stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, I thought it was really weird because like an episode ago, there was all of these different reveals, right? And so much exposition. And that's like, that could have been an episode about secrets being revealed. Then if you went back like 4 episodes or so, you had all the different histories of like Atlantis and Vandal Savage. Like that would have fit there. But for this episode, I was like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I honestly didn't even think about the title of the show and not really fitting. But yeah, I can't think of anything. I mean,
my assumption would be that it's the title of a comic, and there's something in this episode that is a reference to that particular issue.
Maybe. I mean, the only other thing I can think of is that sounds like civilizations or society is like that whole kind of off-topic conversation about that they have in the meeting in Supertown about like why can't I explain what it is? Like relationships between different races and species and all that.
Yeah. They had that little conference that basically talk to kind of recruit the new gods to help the people of Earth. And there was some reference to Krypton before it blew up, right? And then they started to kind of talk about like the differences between like the new gods and humans, and like even the new gods, they have like the kind of the bug people that Forger's from. So there was actually some great like kind of world building stuff, some character stuff right in there. But I didn't feel like any secrets were revealed. The only thing I felt was kind of a revelation was the Green Lantern that was there, one of the 2 Green Lanterns, Tomar Ray, one of the more recognizable Green Lanterns. He mentioned how Krypton was in his sector that he protects.
Yeah.
And that's not something new for this show. That's something that they've discussed in the comics before,
Really? I actually didn't know that.
Yeah. No, it's always been kind of like, oh, he guarded this sector. And then there's absolutely been like a what if, or sorry, not a what if, but like an Elseworlds of like, what if like Superman was a Green Lantern, right? Like what if they were able to stop the destruction of Krypton because of the Green Lanterns? But Tomar Ray always kind of treats it like this sort of like this, great failure of his life. And even in this episode, they kind of reference that,
Yeah, he definitely mentions that. And then we have Kilowog peeing in his suit.
That's probably the funniest part. So you think he was peeing in his suit, huh? Not shitting?
I suppose it could be either, but I mean, I don't know. Yeah, it could go either way. They didn't really specify, I don't think.
I mean, he's a massive pig man. We don't even know what he's actually doing in his suit, you know?
Very true.
Yes, but that was
Maybe that's the secret. How Green Lanterns go to the bathroom.
Yes, the secrets have been revealed. That's how they go. You know, just for fun, just because you're my friend and like, who gives a fuck who's watching? Sorry, fans that actually do watch. But did you ever hear about the retcon that J.K. Rowling did for the Hogwarts students going to the bathroom?
No.
Okay. Yeah, we're getting a little touchy talking about J.K. Rowling, but like one of the things that's bad about her Twitter, besides her like anti-trans stuff that she's always putting out, is that she just like starts to make up new things about Harry Potter that actually kind of like lessens the quality of the stories. And so they didn't have plumbing at Hogwarts until like the last, I don't know, 50 years or so, because they would just get rid of waste with magic. So like kids would just go poop in a corner and then do a little like Avada Gazana and like get rid of the poop, you know, with a spell. Like she tweeted that shit.
To like why did that need to even be explained?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. It was like an ask me anything. And she was like, well, that's how they go to the bathroom. Like plumbing wasn't invented until they got it from the Muggles, you know? But sorry, that's just a weird little tangent. I thought that would entertain you. So
it did.
What did you like best about this episode? Which aspect? Because there's a lot of shit going on.
Honestly, the thing that I don't want to say I necessarily liked it because it was a kind of a very deep moment, but the therapy session with Beast Boy and Black Canary, that really hit hard.
Yes,
because he came in like, oh, going through the motions, blah blah blah, but then like he really got into that, and like they really got to the down to the nitty gritty with that, and like I was like jaw on the floor watching that. And because they've been building that up for a very, very long time now. So,
it's funny because, like, I think I've said this before, but there was more dramatic stuff in this, more adult, more mature stuff in this than you get in most of your Arrowverse shows.
Yeah.
You know, and it's kind of funny. One thing I have to point out because it just kind of made me cringe, but when he was talking about his ex-girlfriend. And then Black Canary's like, why don't you call her? And he's like, oh, I need to be private for, you know, our makeup sessions can get kind of hot. And I was like, oh. He's like 14.
Yeah, that was a little cringy. Yes, I'll absolutely give you that. But I mean, other than that, like once he starts getting rolling about, he wasn't there for Connor, and he wasn't there for Rita and for Brienne, even though he's still alive and all that. Like, you know, and he doesn't want to lose the outsiders. He doesn't want to get kicked out of his team and all that, because that's all he has. Man, right. that was really, really hard to watch.
Yeah, very well voice acted. And it was a great kind of scene because Black Canary was such a big part of the show in the first season and training the team. And, for her to kind of have this role where she's helping him get to this point where he kind of realizes how powerful his grief is. I think yeah, you're right. It was a very great scene. The actor that is Beast Boy on the show, the voice actor, he's the same one from like Teen Titans Go, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like the same voice. I know that Cyborg's voice.
It's interesting in itself too, because, there's such different portrayals. Even if you go between, the original Teen Titans cartoon and then Teen Titans Go and this, it's all very different.
Yes, that's one of my favorite things is when like voice actors kind of transfer over from like one version, one universe of an animated show to another. And because it really kind of makes their personality kind of stand out. It's always like, oh, well, that's like the Beast Boy persona. It's connected to this voice. This is what Beast Boy sounds like. I mean, when I read a comic, that's what I hear is that voice for Beast Boy.
Yeah, same here. Absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah, that was a really great scene. That was definitely the most dramatic scene. Then of course we had our little conference that's on New Genesis, and we had like the different perspectives on like love. We got a little cameo appearance by Bear, who's one of the Forever people. That's from the New Gods comics. And he was talking about love with Forager because Forager is in love with Forager. And so they had this little comparison where Jay Garrick was like, I just turned 102. And then Bear was like, oh, I'm 16,000 years old, you know?
Yeah,
All that.
it's always those age the vast differences in lifespans is always really curious to me because you know humans like there's other things we mature in 20 years or so approximately, but
Yeah.
a character like Bear there is 16,000, but he almost still seems like he's an adolescent.
Right,
And
right.
it's like, how does that stage last that long?
Yeah, yeah. That's a good point. I mean, I think that the Forever people are considered to be like the teenagers of the New Gods. And that's the way they were in like the old Jack Kirby comics. And so like a person like Orion is probably like in his mid 20s and like maybe 30s. The same would be for Mr. Miracle. And then like Darkseid and Highfather are probably like 50s or so. But so they're probably like hundreds of thousands of years old.
Yeah, but I just like I think. I mean, are you just like learning slower? Or do you just not pick things up as quickly? It's like, I couldn't
Yeah.
imagine being a teenager for that long. You know?
Yeah. It's all, I guess, relative, right? Because there's the expectations that you have based on how long you've been alive. And so with our 75-year lifespan or so that we have as humans, we're expected to be at a certain point and we finish physically developing at a certain point. These guys, they kind of finish physically developing and then they just kind of look the same forever, essentially. But yeah, I love that kind of storytelling is always intriguing to me. It sounds like it's intriguing to you too, whether it's like dealing with vampires, like if they're forever this one age, or like immortal characters or like elves that are in, fantasy. And that's the cool thing about this show is that they just will shove all these different weird concepts into one episode and they just don't care how the audience feels about it. It's just like, hey, you've come here for the weird shit. Here you go.
Yeah, this is the story they want to tell, and they're telling it no matter what.
Yeah, exactly. And we're not not sugarcoating it, but we're not like simplifying it for you or going out of our way to explain everything. You just have to, pay attention.
Yeah,
So,
seriously, pay attention.
yeah. So okay, so then the other story arc, because we'll save the Phantom Zone for the last part.
Sure.
The other story arc was Lord Zod and Mantis, who's another one of those New God characters, but from Apocalypse, and then Ma'alfa'ak, McGann's brother, trying to rob Metron and his universe, and he has a vault within his own little dimension. And did you like that sequence?
Yeah, it was interesting, although it was a little hard to follow because they kept going like, oh, this is a day earlier and this is 2 days earlier, and it went back and forth a few times.
Yeah.
I guess I know we discussed how they interpret time travel in this show, how it's just like it always happened and they just have to kind of get around, and repeat it. So it was interesting to see that. I definitely was confused by that whole sequence stuff. Obviously, I know what their goal was. It seemed a little weird. They're just going to hang out in Metron's little vault and just open everything, and he's not going to notice anything, which is odd. I mean, does he just think no one's going to get in there, I guess?
Yeah. He's always portrayed as super arrogant. So I think that was the idea. But he did have that baby sun eater in there.
Yes.
And I thought that was pretty awesome because that's a reference to Grant Morrison's All-Star Superman.
It was from All-Star. Okay. I know you said Grant Morrison, but I couldn't remember exactly where it was from. But interesting.
I think it's not just that. It's also from like his Justice League run too, which is incredible.
Yeah.
But yeah, like his Superman stuff kind of just bleeds over. Whenever Superman's in his thing, he references certain things, and he always references that Sun Eater too. But yeah, it was kind of cool. It would keep attacking them, and it was like this red mist. So I really like that. And I like kind of like those three guys trying to pull off this heist. But like he did kind of what I was expecting him to do. I kind of called that from a mile away. He's like, here, this is a box from Krypton. And it's like, what's he going to pull out? Like, obviously he's going to pull out kryptonite, right?
Yeah. I think the most interesting thing I found about that scene is that the one who saves the day, essentially, from their perspective, was Mantis, who kind of
Mm-hmm.
seemed like the dumb one,
Mm-hmm.
in a way.
Mm-hmm.
But he was
Mm-hmm.
like, "Oh no, I'm going to throw everybody back. We're going to go to a different time. I'm going to look in that same box right next to it, and we're going to get the right thing."
Right.
And I found that very interesting, and I'm kind of wondering if we're going to see uh, some more at him than just being a general background character.
Yeah. Yeah. This show, they have really kind of developed those bug characters a lot, right? They've made Forger into a thing. They keep having Forger be at the end credits, right? And it's always this little entertaining thing. And I think that they took Mantis and they kind of made him more like Forger, or their version of Forger, for this. And he was kind of like this dumb brute, but he is like one of Darkseid's main guys. So he's obviously got something going, because I mean, if he was incompetent, Darkseid would have killed him a long time ago.
Yeah.
So, it was kind of cool. It was cool. He was like, okay, well, this seems to be the Kryptonian section, so the Phantom Zone projector's got to be in here somewhere, and they ends up finding it. So that was cool. And then it was cool that like Metron was able to get free from them, and he essentially said like the Kyle Reese line from Terminator, where he's like, "Come with me if you want to live," but it was come with me if you want to save the universe or whatever.
Yeah, but we don't see anything happen with that yet.
Right. And that's. Do you think that the next episode is going to be the last part of this arc, or do you think there might be two more?
I'm going to assume that it's going to be the last one. I feel like they kind of advanced a lot. I mean, the goal was to get that projector to break Zod out of the Phantom Zone. That's what they were aiming for. I think that's going to happen next episode, and then the whatever Nightwing base arc they're going to have is going to be resolving the fallout of that, because there's no way they're just going to drop that. I mean, there's no way Zod's going to get out and then that's just going to be it in one episode. Well, I feel like that's going to be a major focus of the end of the season.
Yeah, that's essentially like the culmination of everything that's been going on, right?
Yeah, they're probably going to draw from every story arc from the season here and bring it all together and have it kind of fall under Nightwing, the de facto leader of the the team.
The team, right. Yeah. So that brings us to Zod then. So, we referenced it at the beginning, but there's this little like kind of chant, this little song that they start singing, and it's all about the House of Zod. Do this for the House of Zod. It absolutely 100% sounds like a cult. Essentially everything that you do is for the House of Zod. So Zod is essentially, got all these, Kryptonians together, and it doesn't really seem like it's a huge group of Kryptonians, right? Maybe
it seems like maybe there's like a dozen of them or so, maybe even less.
Right. So that makes them a lot less formidable of a challenge, I think. Like if there was like hundreds of Kryptonians, that'd be a real problem. But like,
yeah, but I mean, think about having, 12 Superman versus one. I mean, that's still pretty significant.
Yes. But then, like, with that being said, on this show, we've never really seen how truly dangerous Superman is, right? Like, we often talk about the Amazon Invincible show, and they clearly demonstrate how powerful Omni-Man is, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so on this show, they've made Superman seem really strong as usual, but it's never that kind of like, oh my God, he could like annihilate the Earth kind of strong. Would you agree? Or
yeah, I would agree with that. But I mean, I think that they still could show that, with Zod and with maybe they have the 12 Kryptonians come and just attack the Earth and somehow take it over that easily.
Yeah, that would be kind of cool. One of the things I think they made a big point of in this episode was that in the Phantom Zone, you're intangible, right? Like you can't touch things, right? And so to be able to have any kind of impact, you have to have like a strong will. And so it's all about like the will of your mind. And I think they're really playing that up, really focusing on that, which I think will make them extra dangerous. Because like whenever we have Kryptonians that first come to Earth in a lot of stories, there's usually a time of like adjustment where they get used to their powers. Like Man of Steel is the most obvious example. When Zod comes down in that and he's just kind of disoriented and he doesn't know how to use his powers yet. But in this, I feel like they're going to come in and they're just going to be ready to go right away.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And what I thought was interesting too was that you had Feora and you had Ursa. Usually you have like one or the other.
Yeah, usually you usually get none, but this is the first time I've ever seen both of them in this at the same time. I think too.
Right.
If I'm not mistaken, too, I'm not sure who it was, but I could have sworn I saw that there was a House of L symbol on one of those shirts that was like scratched out.
Oh, cool.
So
Okay.
I'm not sure who that was, but I'm definitely curious to see more of that and if that has any significance.
Oh, that'd be really cool. That'd be really cool. Yeah, I actually really like the Superman mythology. I like a lot of the Kryptonian stuff, the background stuff. Yeah, it's got a good mythology. What do you call it? That's a little fun question just to toss your way. Out of like all the weird kind of alien mythologies, whether it's like in DC with like Kryptonians, or maybe it's like the Green Lantern stuff, or in Marvel with like the Shi'ar, or the Phalanx. Which kind of like alien history do you think is the coolest one?
Oh
You
man,
can
that's
say
a
the
hard
good guys.
question at the top there. I don't know.
See, because I'll let you think, and I'll just ramble so that we don't have dead air.
Yep.
But for me, one thing I don't like is when they try to tie every single thing that's in Superman's history to Krypton, and they make it like it's all happening together at once. It's like, oh well, there's Doomsday and there's Brainiac and all like. I like just having maybe one thing be from
So
Krypton.
basically, like that video you sent me a couple weeks ago.
That's right. That's right. The Max Landis Kryptonian epic. That's right.
Yeah.
Where it's just like everything is from here. It's like too much, But like if you have like maybe General Zod and Brainiac from Krypton, that's cool with me. And then if you're still coming up with your answer, for me, I think that my favorite mythology is the what do you call it? The Green Lantern Corps. I just think it's real interesting, and I think I'm probably the most invested in that because one of the things that was a big turning point for my interest in comics was when Jeff Johns expanded on the corps and he had like the Red Lanterns and the Blue Lanterns and the Yellow Lanterns. That like made my fandom kind of increase. And it already was at a crazy point,
Yeah, no, that was definitely an interesting time. I haven't read. I think I read. I never read Blackest Night. I read like Brightest Day, I think, but not Blackest Night. Yeah,
wait,
I know. But I guess I don't know I definitely don't know anywhere near as much about the core as you do. But still, I'm having a real hard time picking something out of this. I mean, that's such a vast question that I feel like I really need to think about it to give a good answer. But I mean, Green Lantern Corps wouldn't be a bad choice in that regard.
Yeah, and Marvel has some amazing, cosmic stuff. It's kind of like a stew because it has so many different things. You have like Thanos and then the Eternals and the Star-Lord's people and the Nova Corps. There's a whole bunch of different things and not necessarily like one standout thing. But I really do love the Marvel cosmic shit too. You think about it, and then maybe next episode, since we'll still be talking about this topic, we can talk about it some more. And then if anyone's watching at home, if y'all want to chime in with what's your favorite kind of alien race or alien history, let us know too. Did you have anything else for this episode of Young Justice?
I don't think so. Nope.
All right. Then, my friends, it is time to talk about the penultimate Moon Knight episode 5, which is entitled Asylum. And Brian, one of my points I made to you right away was I thought this was the most Doom Patrol episode of any MCU show ever.
Yes, totally agree with that statement. Yeah. It was very much about mental health and uncovering past trauma, and yeah, I mean, did they do a good enough job? I mean, how would you compare this to a Doom Patrol episode in terms of that? Did you
That's
feel
a great question
for this as much as you would have for like, say, Cliff or Jane or?
That is a very, very good question. I think that this was a sleeker version of a Doom Patrol episode. It was like tighter than a Doom Patrol episode, and obviously the production was better. However, I care so much more about the Doom Patrol characters, and I cared so much more about the Doom Patrol characters 5 episodes in than I do for Mark Spector and Stephen Grant and all these other characters. So this episode made me appreciate Mark Spector and Stephen Grant way more than I did for the first 4 episodes. But like, I enjoy Doom Patrol a lot more. What about you, man?
Yeah, I would definitely choose Doom Patrol in that regard here. I actually think this episode, I mean, at the end of the last episode, I didn't know how they were going to resolve this whole conflict they set up in 2 episodes. And that's kind of like exaggerated now to me too. Like, I really don't know how this wraps up, and I'm starting to kind of lose it for this show. Like,
really?
Like, yes. Like, I'm pretty, unless they had pull out some like crazy stuff in the next episode and really turn my opinion around, I think I might rank this pretty low in my MCU show so far.
Okay. I'm going to agree with you on that like, I would rank this low so far, right? However, I like this episode way better than all the other episodes so far. And so it made me like this version of Moon Knight a lot more, and just this world and this mythology they're kind of building around him. But yeah, I have not enjoyed the show as much as some of the other MCU shows that we've covered, but I thought this was one of the better MCU episodes so far. What about?
I suppose, yeah, as a standalone episode, yes, there were some interesting things in it, but like I said, as a whole, I really think this episode started to fall off the rails for me because I don't know how it resolves, and I don't like. I feel like there's no way that they're going to get a satisfying ending out of this to appease all my questions and curiosities and all that. I mean, we essentially didn't have the suit in this episode at all. It was in a flashback, but they had in order to stop Harrow and stop the coming of the resurrection of Amit or Amit or whatever you want to call it, resurrection or release of Amit. He has to come back to life. Layla has to free Khonshu from the statue, and then they have to go actually stop Harrow, and then we also have to figure out what happens with Steven, because he seems to be stuck in what was that place called?
Duat,
yeah, in the Duat.
Yeah. No, I agree. There's like a lot of stuff that has to happen by the end of the next episode, and it kind of doesn't seem like even just getting to step 1, which is like he has to come back to life because he's dead, right? Like, just that part is, how's that going to happen in the first place too?
Yeah, I mean, I assume they kind of achieved that because by the end of the episode the scale was balanced. So, but I guess that door, Osiris's door, was still closed anyway because he's in the Field of Reeds now.
Yeah,
so they
that was kind of yeah.
I guess that's ultimately was my issue. It was very confusing because they said they were going to do this and they immediately said, then it immediately made it seem like they can't do it because Steven is gone. He's in the Field of Reeds. The Osiris's door was closed, and then on top of all that too, I was really confused about how they explained how Steven was created.
That was such a big part of this episode too.
It is a very big part of that. I mean, I definitely the whole story about how Mark was had a younger brother, Randall, and he was kind of responsible for him, and they went into this cave, and then it rained, and his brother is implied to have drowned in the cave.
Right.
That's very dramatic and very, very dark, and that's something I was expecting. And I don't believe that did not happen in the comics because Randall is a villain in the comics for a short time.
Sure.
So what ends up happening is that his mother blames him for his brother's death and just does not let it go. And becomes very abusive to him. So Mark creates an alternate personality to deal with the abuse, but the alternate personality exists as if the abuse didn't happen. And it really confused me because there's a point where you see Mark is in his room and he knocks over some pens, and as he's
Yeah.
cleaning them up, he says, "Oh, bloody hell!" And he's picking them up, and you can tell it's Stephen there. But then you see the mom come in and start yelling, and I'm like, this doesn't make sense. There's something is very this is not connecting well here, and it was very confusing overall. And I guess the way they're trying to explain it is that he created Stephen as kind of like a version of himself that had all his memories except for the bad ones.
Yeah.
But in the show, they made it seem like he created it was created and experienced the bad memory, the bad parts. So it really didn't make too much sense there.
Yeah. Look, I totally agree with you, which that's a surprise, right? I never agree with you, right? But like, it is confusing because it's like, is it that it's what you said, where he is like the one that's like taking the abuse and that's this personality that takes the abuse? Is it like he was created so that he could be like a better version of himself because the mother clearly was mad at him for what had happened, right? It's like, oh, I'm going to be a better version of myself so that my mom won't abuse me. It was very confusing. It seemed inconsistent within this one episode. And the thing with the brother kind of came out of left field too. All the stuff that they've kind of talked about with his personality and having multiple personalities, I don't know if I would have guessed that it was because of trauma from his childhood. You know,
Yeah.
like obviously it had to be something to make him have this kind of illness, but I didn't feel like they gave us clues about a brother or anything like that until this episode.
Yeah, they didn't give us any clues there, but I mean, they did give us clues with the mom because Stephen was supposedly talking on the phone to his mom in the first episode or two.
Yeah.
I always felt that seemed out of place. I knew something was going to be up with that.
Yeah.
But I still don't understand. I guess he was just talking to no one.
Yeah, it's like a Fight Club thing, and there's definitely like kind of some Fight Club stuff in this too.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. We have a comment from Kristen Corson. Do you happen to know this person?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay. Sure. If Stephen was created by Mark as this alter ego who was supposed to be braver, judging by the movie character he was inspired by, why was Stephen portrayed as the nervous, weaker of the two? Very good question, Kristen Corson.
Yeah, because the movie character of Stephen Grant seems like almost like a British Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
And the personality of Stephen Grant seems very, very meek overall.
Right.
So there is a disconnect there somewhat.
Yeah, and just to kind of keep going with what you were talking about it being confusing, there's this one sequence where they're looking through these doors in this asylum, and each door kind of leads to a different flashback. And when they look through one of the doors, they see, I guess, Mark standing in a New York street. And Mark seems to not recognize the street. Stephen seems to not recognize the street. And I thought, oh, is this the first kind of reference to Jake Lockley? Right?
Yeah.
Like, is this where Jake Lockley is going to come in? And then it just turned out that it was Mark went to go to his mother's Shiva, and then he kind of chickened out, and then he turned into Stephen, and then Stephen didn't even realize that his mother had died. And so that was just another example for me where it's kind of confusing. It's like, wait a minute, like it seems like they both don't remember this moment, but Mark was clearly there. Go ahead.
I took that as that was how Mark was trying to prevent Stephen from finding out all the stuff and digging deeper and finding out what happened and how he was created. Because to this point, we know that Mark is the original personality from the comics, but Stephen didn't know that. And I bet that most viewers probably didn't know that either because we're introduced to Stephen first in this show.
Right.
And Mark seems to be the alter. So it was I'm kind of curious if someone took that revelation that didn't know it going in. So yeah, Kristen, did you know that going in?
Let's see if she comments. While we're waiting too, because if she's like doing something, someone in this episode, I thought maybe it was Harrow, said this line of, "Did Stephen create Mark to punish the world for all the awful things your mother did to you?" Is Harrow the one that said that line?
Yes, Harrow says that. Yes, and to me, that would make more sense in terms of like the like the cliche version of an alternate personality.
Right.
But it doesn't seem. I mean, maybe that's just the whole idea, is that they're doing it backwards to be different.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, because the cliched thing is, and I think there's probably examples prior to Fight Club, but the most obvious one is you think is Fight Club, where it's like this better alpha version of you that does all the things you can't do. And in this story, it seems like Mark is that, and Steven is the kind of bumbling, that's our weak version, right?
Yeah.
But you're saying it's like they do the reverse of it. It's like he created this bumbling, meek version. It's kind of interesting, because it kind of reminds me of Tarantino's little speech that he wrote for fucking the guy from Kung Fu that killed himself. That he plays Bill in Kill Bill, right? He does that whole. Thank you so much, David Carradine. If we did our drinking game this week, people would not be getting drunk as quickly because we are getting the names this time. But David Carradine does that whole speech about Superman at the end of Bill Hill. Wow, Kill Bill Volume 2. Yes, and it's like how he makes himself weak to be like a human, and that's kind of the way it is with Mark. It's like he kind of makes himself weak. But like Kristen's question was really great because the character in the movie is not weak, so I think she's got a really good point there. The show is like a little loose, it's not consistent, and I think that we've talked about this before, but Marvel really, really relies on people being excited about what's next or what's this referring to or what came before it. And it's a little bit of like, oh, don't worry about that because this is going to connect to Eternals. And this was actually the first episode for me where I didn't really care about how it connected to the other stuff. I actually was very focused on this story. But like you said, the story itself was kind of confusing and didn't like all add up.
Yeah, I mean, yes, this definitely has the least connection to anything. I mean, there was a very brief mention of the ancestral plane in this episode to kind of connect it to the larger world, but
yes,
but ultimately it's rather empty. It doesn't mean anything, and I guess this kind of is answering the question: is that are we enjoying these shows because of their actual quality themselves, or we just enjoying their how they fit into the larger picture?
Yeah. Well, I mean, my answer to that question is I think I do enjoy them because of how they fit into the larger picture.
Yeah.
There's some great performances, there's some clever moments, but overall I'm not sitting there wanting to watch these shows again because I'm like, oh, that part's really good or that part's really good. Whereas in a Marvel movie, I'd be like, oh, I can't wait for this part. I mean, there's a couple of moments in these shows, but so much of it it's just like, it's like with comics where they have the tie-in issues, then they have like the main story, right?
Yeah.
And the main story stuff is usually the interesting stuff, and the tie-in issues for like crossovers and stuff can have their moments, but they're just not as good as like the main stuff.
Do you feel that this show would have benefited more, or with more Moon Knight scenes in general, or is that just like a vehicle to move the story along? Really?
Yeah, the Moon Knight himself is the most boring fucking part of the show.
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah. The what's interesting about this show, because I like this discussion because we're like, well, what's good about this show? What do we like? For me, what's good about this show is the interaction between Oscar Isaac's two characters he's portraying, Stephen Grant and Mark Spector. That's the most interesting part of the show. I don't give a shit about his wife; she's pretty boring.
Oh, you mean Mark Spector and Mork Sphincter?
Mark Sphincter, that's right, his brother.
The name his brother gave the character when he's on the screen.
Yes. Do you want to explain that to our viewers if they're like, what the fuck's he talking about?
So there, in some of the shots, obviously there are some shots in the show where you're seeing Oscar Isaac twice, but in some shots you'll see Oscar's face and you'll see like the back of the other character, and that is being played by Oscar's real life brother, and he dubbed that version of the character Mork Sphincter as a kind of like a joke, and I said that to Pete because I thought it was funny.
Yeah, Mork Sphincter, yeah. But like, that's the most enjoyable part of the show is those two personalities clashing. And I like Khonshu. I kind of like how Khonshu is the sort of outcast Egyptian god, And then last but not least, I like Ethan Hawke. I actually like Ethan Hawke in pretty much every single thing he's in. Always, I like him as a person. I do not like him in Reality Bites. I'm just saying that so my wife can hear that upstairs, because I think he's a real asshole in Reality Bites. But everything else that he's in, I think he's great.
Yeah, I do like Ethan Hawke in the show. I think he's a pretty good villain. I like that the perspective of how Ahmed views evildoers as opposed to Khonshu. But I feel like that's not at the forefront at all. That's like a very passive background thing. It seems,
Yeah.
especially in the last couple episodes here. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're right though. Like, I guess the Moon Knight stuff is the most boring stuff in the show, and that's like weird to me.
I know. The way that
like, other than being excited to, like, when you first see like the crescent moons and just the cape thing and all that. I mean, and I guess the initial when you initially see Mr. Knight, although I felt like that was a letdown to me.
Yeah.
Like those parts were exciting, but yeah, I guess really the best part of this show is the interactions between Mark and Steven. And I guess
Right.
I wonder, like I said, I wonder if you didn't know that, the comic background here, is that more interesting? Was that reveal heightened because of it? Or were we dulled because we knew it was going to happen?
That's a really good question. And if people are watching this at home too, like, let us know what you know about Moon Knight, and let us know if this is like your first introduction to him, because for many, many people, this is the first time they've even like heard of Moon Knight, I like, this is kind of going off script a little bit, but I like where this conversation is going. It's basically like, for me, I'm a little bit of a poser for being a Moon Knight fan, because I would say that Moon Knight is like in my top 10 Marvel characters. However, the majority of Moon Knight stories I've read have been from like maybe 2005 on, or even maybe a little bit before then, but like I did not read a lot of his 80s stuff or 90s or whatever. And so I'm not as like familiar with the whole history of the characters and like the X-Men or Spider-Man or whatever. But what I will say is the Moon Knight that I do love and I've read, the Warren Ellis stuff, the Jeff Lemire stuff, the Jed McKay stuff, I like when he seems like crazy and he's in the Moon Knight costume, and he's not like Deadpool or something, but he's just, you could just tell that that's a fucking lunatic behind the mask. And he kind of tries to make it seem like he's cool, but he's like too weird and crazy. That's the best version of Moon Knight, is that.
Yeah, so would this show have worked better as a more street level show then?
I mean, 1,000%. Yes. They have to do this with the MCU, and they're kind of failing at this with the MCU. Honestly, the street level stuff in the MCU kind of doesn't exist. Like the closest thing we have is maybe like Hawkeye, but that's still like he was an Avenger, and we're referencing the Avengers all the time, and like that's really the most street level stuff. Like the Spider-Man stuff is all like worldwide. The last Spider-Man movie was like the multiverse and stuff,
Yeah.
But you could easily tell a Spider-Man street level story too.
Well, I mean, I think the best Spider-Man stories are street level stories, with the exception of, I thought Spider-Verse was one of the best like crossovers that has ever existed in Marvel, to be honest. But I always think back to Batman, actually. How Batman in his solo books is this like totally different character than he is in the Justice League. So it's because it on the surface it is like, how the hell does Batman fit into the Justice League?
Right.
But so they have to like elevate him to be this like beyond peak perfect human being, almost like robotic in a way. To have him stand, amongst the other characters, and still he's by far, most people's favorite superhero, compared to other DC characters. But like I feel like they're giving us like a larger scale story with this character, where it may have served him better to have been a smaller scale.
Yes. There's only one Moon Knight story I've ever read where it was like large scale, and it's the one that I have a toothbrush for some reason. Where and I've referenced this like 5 times in this fucking show, but like, you know, Khonshu needs Moon Knight to get all the powers of the Avengers, and so he like takes on the Avengers and he beats them, and that's the only time it's been this like large scale thing for him. Otherwise,
You
it's
know,
always like,
I'm actually in the middle of reading that right now, and to me, it feels weird.
yeah, oh yeah. He shouldn't be that powerful, and he like, takes out fucking Thor and, you know, Captain America and Blade and stuff. It's,
like they, you know, there was a panel or a couple panels from a page that kind of went viral about this show where you see Moon Knight give a little speech and like stop Thor's hammer and say like, oh, you know, you don't know what Uru is, and you know, guess what? It's moon rocks. And you know who's
right.
good with moon stuff? Me.
Right.
You know what time it is? It's the super moon or something like that. Like that was actually really cool, I think. But I think that's like a standalone panel in this story so far. That I guess I'm halfway through. I'm in part 4, I think.
Right.
And everything else just seems really like out of place and a miss. And I feel like you know, I'd rather go back to, you know, the Warren Ellis arc, or I mean, I haven't read the Jeff Lemire one, or the like the Bendis arc where he was just like fighting like some like gang.
Yeah. His street level stuff is great, and you know, there's also this. I can't remember who the writer is. I don't think it's David Finch, but David Finch is definitely the artist, and it's the one where he like cuts off Bushman's face, right? And
Yeah.
that arc is good too. Like, there's all these modern Moon Knight arcs, the Bendis one that you just referenced, and then the other ones I referenced before. I mean, there's a good solid like at least 15 years of Moon Knight that's like in the last 15 years. And, you know, Daredevil's like that too. And we just don't get that with these shows. And this is the kind of stuff that you'll see on Twitter too. I've seen this multiple times this week where they're talking about how because the MCU is kind of bloodless, and because the MCU is, it's the shows aren't necessarily made for kids. I think I'm actually directly quoting a tweet I said, like, the shows aren't necessarily made for kids, but yet a kid could watch them. It's, you know, it's you're kind of losing the kind of story that you could tell for Daredevil,
to make it a more family friendly show. Yeah.
Right. And it's weird too, because, you know, Disney did this thing. I don't know if you noticed this, but like Disney did this thing now where if I go to log in, I have to enter in a PIN. Did they do that for you too?
Oh, no.
Yeah, I was wondering if they did that because they just got the Marvel Netflix shows on there, right?
Yeah.
And obviously that's more adult content than
you know what? I'm sorry. Yes, I did have to set up the PIN thing, but I declined to do it. Like, I'm like, yeah, whatever.
Oh, okay. But I think it's something to do with like they have more mature content on there, and I'm assuming that at some point they're going to put like Alien and Aliens and Predator, because they own all that stuff. I feel like they're going to put that on there eventually, and it's like, well, they can't have it be the same kind of streaming service that they claim it is. You know, they have to make a distinction. You can't have little kids watching things like that, you know?
Yeah,
so
it's kind of interesting how they handled it in other countries, because they had that Star Plus app in some foreign countries to house all that. It was to house all the Fox content, basically, all the R-rated stuff and all that, and to separate it from the family friendly portion of the Disney brand name.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the ultimate problem, right? Is that like with comic book fans, and I like that we're going on these tangents here. There's always those comic book fans that want like the really bloody Batman movie, or the like, oh, we got to make like a Deadpool that's rated R, and we got to make a Wolverine that's rated R. And I think when you read comics, there's so few comics that are like rated R that feature our characters that we love so much. You know, there's a couple of like rated R Batman books. There's maybe 1 or 2 rated R kind of Wolverine books, but for the most part, it's all PG-13. Now, with like the movie Deadpool and the movie Logan, they were able to make something better. But like, I don't think that you need to have like a rated R kind of story, you know?
Yeah, I can agree with that.
I do think that like when you do the Punisher or Moon Knight, it does seem like it could warrant a R rating. And I think you're not stretching it too much to make that work. I mean, especially with the Punisher. I mean, and the Punisher is actually this weird example because you have like Punisher Max, and that went on for so many years, and that's clearly rated R.
Yes.
But like, yeah, I just to go back to your point, I think that is a better fit for Moon Knight. Street level, dark, violent stuff versus global reaching, Indiana Jones type thing,
Yeah. Agreed.
It's like the emphasis on the wrong aspects of the character. You have this character that's like multiple parts, and you're like, oh, let's focus on the Indiana Jones part and the God part, where it's more like, no, focus on the vigilante and the crazy part,
Yeah.
I mean, they did focus on the crazy part too.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we ranted a lot, man. Is there anything else you want to say about this episode?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to go real quick into, did we see Jake Lockley? I mean, they've kind of hinted at it there. Do you think they still could reveal it? Do you think it matters at all? I don't know. What are your thoughts in general? I mean, because there was a scene in Harrow's office where he seemed to speak a little differently. He had kind of like the broken nose kind of look there. And he seemed a little more aggressive and violent. I mean, is that a hint? Is that just is there any significance there? I mean, we did 2 episodes ago. We did see the third sarcophagus in the mental hospital, kind of shaking, trying to get out. But I mean, like, what benefit could there be into adding that third persona into this right now, with 1 episode left in the spot we're in here?
I think, to answer that question directly, what benefit could we have for introducing this third personality? I think that essentially you're going to get 2 post-credit scenes. One post-credit scene is going to tie into Thor, God and Thunder, Thor, Love and Thunder, and it's going to have something to do with gods and Khonshu and Gore. There's going to be something like that. Then the other post-credit scene, if they are introducing Jake Lockley, that's where it's going to be. And the idea is that Moon Knight actually, he saves the day, but he's more dangerous. And maybe that's a way to tie him into the sort of like dark Avengers that they've been building with like US Agent and who else did she recruit?
Yelena.
Was that?
Yelena.
Okay, right. So I think Marvel does this a lot. The MCU does this a lot, where they kind of blend a couple of things together, but they'll give it like the title of one thing, but it'll be kind of a couple of things together. And I think that the Dark Avengers is kind of a little bit like the Avengers West Coast, because on that one you had US Agent and you had Black Widow on that, but it's the regular Black Widow. But with those two, they were both on the Avengers West Coast, and I'm pretty sure Moon Knight was on the Avengers West Coast too, the West Coast Avengers. So like maybe that's how you like shoehorn him into another Marvel thing. It's like, he's kind of dangerous because he's got this other personality now, and that's more like the crazy deranged Moon Knight that I was talking about before.
Yeah, and they've kind of already hinted that both this show and Hawkeye would not be getting second season, because I think they submitted them as like limited series for like some awards show.
Right.
So yeah, I'm curious to see if that sounds very plausible, I think. But I also wouldn't be surprised if we just don't see Moon Knight again, honestly.
Yeah, I know. It's all based on people's reception of the show. I haven't seen a lot of super positive things about the show the way I've seen it about like WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But yeah, this could be the end of Moon Knight for here. But I enjoyed this episode the most, and I think I've said it a couple of times. And I don't know how the fuck they're going to resolve it in the next episode, but I think at least we'll get some kind of exciting connective tissue to something else, right?
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we got a lot of shit coming up. We're going to have like sort of this end of this Young Justice arc next week, and then we're going to have the end of Moon Knight next week, and then also Doctor Strange is next week.
We the teaser.
Oh, okay.
Let's real quick teaser. So
yes,
things I saw in the teaser. Live action Captain Carter, Teyonah Parris, Captain Marvel, and the freaking yellow 90s Professor X hover chair.
Yes. That's what the fucking internet is a buzz about right now. What the fuck, Captain Marvel, did you just say? What?
It's Monica Rambeau.
Okay. That's the actress that plays her?
Yes.
Okay, so in that trailer, you could tell that was definitely her?
Yeah, the way the costume looks, absolutely. Some people were saying it was is it Invincible Iron Man? No. Superior Iron, whatever the kind of like
Superior Iron Man.
Was it Superior?
Yeah, because it was like Superior Spider-Man.
Yeah. Some people thought it was that, but there's no way. It's absolutely a variant of Captain Marvel, 100%, no doubt in my mind.
Okay, so then like the Illuminati then is Professor X in the 90s cartoon wheelchair, floating chair, right? And then we got Baron Mordo, Captain Carter, Captain Marvel.
Yes.
Right? And then maybe somebody else too.
Yeah, there's got to be a few more in there, I think, to really round that out.
That's fucking hot, man. That's cool.
Yeah.
My excitement for that movie has definitely gone up. There's another scene that they just dropped today too, where it shows like that New York City street scene. That's like trying to think where the fuck Doctor Strange is. Bleecker Street, right? Is his where he
Bleecker
lives?
Street, yep.
Yeah. There's kind of a fight that happens there with Shub Nagarth or whatever. What the fuck is that thing called?
It's not well, it looks like Shub Nagarth, but it's not Shub Nagarth. It's get your shot glasses ready.
Get the drinking game going right at the end.
It's actually something like Atlantean creature because they couldn't use Shub Nagarth because it's like tied to like Conan or something.
Okay. Yeah, so I saw a little clip from that scene, and it also has America Chavez. Did you see that clip?
I don't think I did actually. No.
Cool. Did you read any of Jason Aaron's Doctor Strange book or no?
No.
Okay. One of the cool things that Jason Aaron did in his Doctor Strange book, and I think Donny Cates kind of followed him with that, was you could see like Doctor Strange's perspective, and he'd just be like walking on the street, and it looks like a normal street, and everyone is just going about their day. But then you'd see his perspective, and there'd be all kinds of weird shit. And they did a thing like that in this scene where like a bus just starts to like get crumpled up, and Doctor Strange is there, and it looks like it's just getting crumpled up on its own, and people are like, "What the fuck's going on?" But then he like does a little spell, and he can see that creature is like destroying the bus. So yeah, I love shit like that. And maybe I don't know. I don't want to spoil it for you, but it was cool. I'm pretty excited about this movie. How do you feel?
Yeah, I'm excited. I think I believe you said this, and I disagree with you, but it is looking more and more like Wanda's going to be an antagonist here. Either that, or they really want you to think that, and so they can pull the rug out from underneath you.
Right, which these Marvel movies usually do with the villains. So yeah, and it'll be kind of sad if she kills off the Illuminati, and then if she kills that, yellow wheelchair Professor X, I'll be kind of sad.
Yeah, I will be too.
Cool, man. Well, in a week, you and I can talk about that shit.
Yes.
All right. So if you guys have not liked and subscribed, then make sure that you do. And we will be back next Thursday with more Young Justice and Moon Knight.